Did you know that Brendan Fraser, once one of Hollywood's biggest stars, suddenly disappeared from the spotlight at the peak of his career? Behind the scenes, something dark was happening, something that made Hollywood quietly turn its back on him. But why did one of the most loved actors of the 90s and 2000s get pushed out of the industry he helped build? Join us as we uncover the real reason Hollywood will never cast Brendan Fraser again. Fraser's meteoric rise. Brendan Fraser's rise in Hollywood was fast, exciting, and full of promise. Before he became a household name, he was just a kid moving between countries and figuring out who he was. Fraser was born in Indianapolis, Indiana, in 1968. His family didn't stay there long. Because of his father's job as a Canadian Foreign Service officer, they moved often. Eventually, they settled in Canada, where Brendan spent most of his teenage years. That mix of American and Canadian upbringing shaped his easygoing and approachable personality, something that would later make him stand out on screen. Brendan's introduction to acting came through theater. As a teenager, he became interested in acting after watching a performance of Oliver while on vacation in London. That moment stuck with him. Soon after, he started taking acting seriously, studying at Upper Canada College in Toronto, and later earning a degree in fine arts from Cornish College of the Arts in Seattle. Theater gave him confidence, taught him discipline, and helped him discover his love for performing. Brendan's first steps into Hollywood came with small roles, but by 1992, everything started to change. His breakout moment was in Encino Man, a goofy comedy about a caveman waking up in modern-day California. Fraser played the caveman, Link, with a mix of wide-eyed wonder and hilarious confusion. What should have been just a silly role became something more in Brendan's hands. He gave Link heart. Even though the character barely spoke, audiences loved him because of the warmth and humanity Fraser brought to the role. That same year, he showed his dramatic side in School Ties. This was a serious drama about anti-Semitism in an elite prep school. Brendan played David Green, a working-class Jewish student who faces prejudice from his wealthy classmates. The film included future stars like Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, but it was Fraser's quiet strength that stood out. After showing he could handle both comedy and serious drama, Hollywood started paying attention. Over the next few years, Brendan kept working steadily, but his next major leap came in 1997 with George of the Jungle. Based on the cartoon of the same name, George of the Jungle was a light-hearted adventure comedy, and Brendan was perfectly cast as George. He was funny and charming and once again showed off his physical skills with ease. His performance was both playful and sincere. Kids loved him, parents liked him, and once again, Fraser managed to make a goofy role feel real and relatable. By the time The Mummy hit theaters in 1999, Brendan Fraser had officially arrived as a Hollywood star. The Mummy was a massive hit, mixing adventure, horror, and comedy into one exciting package. Fraser played Rick O'Connell, a brave, wisecracking adventurer fighting against ancient Egyptian curses. His role in The Mummy was important because it showed that he could be a true action hero, not just a comedic lead. At the same time, he brought his usual warmth and humor to the character. He wasn't trying to be the next tough, silent action star. He was likable, funny, and believable. The success of The Mummy turned into a full trilogy, with The Mummy Returns in 2001 and The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor in 2008. While the later films didn't match the first one's magic, they still kept Fraser in the spotlight for nearly a decade. He also starred in other films during this time, like Bedazzled and Journey to the Center of the Earth, showing his ability to mix action, comedy, and romance. But with that success came a problem that many actors face: typecasting. As Brendan became more famous for playing lovable, goofy, or heroic roles, Hollywood struggled to see him as anything else. Directors and casting agents often overlooked his more dramatic roles, focusing instead on his physical appearance and charm. Even though he had proven his range with movies like School Ties and later Gods and Monsters, the industry kept calling him for similar roles over and over again. Being seen only as the funny, muscular guy limited the kinds of projects he was offered. And while those roles brought him fame, they didn't always give him the creative challenges that serious actors often seek. Hollywood had built a box around Brendan Fraser, and the more he succeeded, the harder it became to break out of that box. Of course, behind the scenes, other challenges were starting to pile up, and soon, the career that once seemed unstoppable would begin to slip away. Life behind the curtains. While Brendan Fraser was making a name for himself in Hollywood, his personal life was unfolding in ways that many people didn't see. Behind the action movies, the red carpets, and the funny interviews was a man trying to build a life, raise a family, and stay grounded. For a while, it seemed like everything was going the right way for him, but eventually, that personal life would start to fall apart, and it would play a big role in the struggles he faced later on. Brendan Fraser met actress Afton Smith in 1993 at a barbecue. It wasn't just any backyard party, it was hosted by actress Winona Ryder, who was one of the biggest stars at the time. Both Brendan and Afton were young actors trying to make it in Hollywood. They clicked right away, and before long, they were a couple. Unlike many celebrity relationships that burn out quickly, theirs seemed different. They were low-key, didn't chase headlines, and seemed to genuinely enjoy each other's company. They dated for 5 years before getting married in 1998, right around the time Brendan's career was hitting new heights with George of the Jungle, and soon after, The Mummy. As Brendan's fame grew, the couple started building a family. They had 3 sons together: Griffin, Holden, and Leland. For Brendan, being a father was something that mattered deeply to him. Friends and family often said that he was devoted to his kids, and that fatherhood gave him a sense of purpose beyond his acting career. For a while, things seemed good. Brendan had a successful career, a beautiful family, and a reputation as one of Hollywood's nice guys. But by the mid-2000s, cracks began to show. In 2007, Brendan and Afton announced that they were getting divorced. At first, the details were kept private, but soon, more information started coming out, and it wasn't good. The divorce was messy. Brendan was ordered by the court to pay Afton $900,000 a year in alimony, plus child support for their 3 sons. While that might sound like pocket change for a Hollywood star, Brendan's financial situation wasn't as strong as people assumed. His major blockbuster days were already slowing down, and unlike some actors who live large with flashy mansions and cars, Fraser had real expenses, mainly medical ones. Years of performing his own stunts had taken a physical toll on his body, leading to multiple surgeries that were expensive and time-consuming. By 2013, Brendan went back to court asking for the alimony payments to be reduced. He explained to the judge that he wasn't making the same kind of money anymore and that the payments were unsustainable. He argued that his health problems were making it harder for him to work at the level he once did. Afton's legal team pushed back, claiming Brendan was hiding earnings, which only made the situation more public and uncomfortable for both of them. This long legal battle over money painted a different picture of Brendan Fraser than the one people were used to. The charming, funny actor from The Mummy was now being talked about as someone who was either broke or trying to avoid financial responsibility. Neither version was completely true, but that didn't stop the media from running with the story. This brings us to one of the toughest parts of Fraser's personal struggles: the tabloids. During the 2000s, celebrity gossip magazines were at their peak. Stars' personal lives were splashed across covers every week. Divorce stories sold well, especially when they involved big-money settlements. Brendan Fraser, who had mostly kept his life private, suddenly found himself at the center of ugly headlines. It wasn't just about the money. Stories started appearing about Brendan's changing appearance. Paparazzi photos showed him looking heavier, tired, and worn down. Online blogs and magazines were brutal, often body-shaming him and making jokes about how Hollywood's hunk had let himself go. What most people didn't know was that the weight gain was tied to his ongoing health problems, surgeries, and depression. But instead of sympathy, Brendan got mockery. What made it worse was that Fraser didn't fight back publicly. He didn't go on talk shows to defend himself or post statements explaining his side of the story. He stayed quiet, which only allowed more rumors to spread. That silence made some people think he didn't care, or had simply given up. The truth was more complicated. Brendan was trying to focus on his kids, deal with his health, and keep his life from completely falling apart. Even with all of this happening, Brendan kept working. He took smaller roles in TV shows and independent films, but they didn't get the attention his earlier work did. Meanwhile, the media kept pushing the story that he was over, and after a while, people started to believe it. Brendan Fraser's personal struggles, especially his divorce and financial troubles, weren't just personal challenges. They became part of a larger story about how Hollywood and the media often build people up only to tear them down when life gets complicated. And as hard as all of that was, it was only one part of the much bigger storm that was coming his way: health issues and injuries. While Brendan Fraser was entertaining millions on screen, few people knew the physical cost he was paying behind the scenes. The roles that made him famous often required more than just acting. They demanded real physical strength, athleticism, and the ability to perform dangerous stunts. Fraser didn't shy away from any of it. In fact, he insisted on doing many of his own stunts, even when he didn't have to. That decision helped make his performances exciting and believable. But over time, it also began to break his body down. When Fraser starred in George of the Jungle in 1997, he didn't just play the part of the vine-swinging, muscle-bound hero, he lived it. He trained hard to transform his body into the look the character required. That meant hours in the gym, strict dieting, and physically demanding scenes where he would jump, fall, swing from ropes, and crash into things. Audiences laughed. The movie made money, and Fraser became a major Hollywood name. But the training and stunt work were already starting to take a toll on him, even though the damage wouldn't fully show until years later. Things really escalated with the Mummy films. Released in 1999, The Mummy wasn't just a comedy adventure. It was full of action scenes that pushed Fraser to his limits. Brendan often talked about how exhausting the shoot was. At one point during filming, he even blacked out after a hanging scene went wrong and he had to be resuscitated. This wasn't a one-time thing, either. Over the next several years, while shooting the Mummy trilogy and other physically intense roles, Fraser kept pushing his body past its breaking point. After years of working like that, his body finally started to break down. Over a span of about 7 years, Fraser had to undergo multiple surgeries just to keep moving and working. These weren't minor procedures either. They were serious operations that changed the way he lived his daily life. He had a partial knee replacement to repair damage done by years of jumping and running on hard sets. He also needed back surgeries, including procedures to repair compressed spinal pads, which caused chronic pain. Even his vocal cords were affected, requiring surgery to help him speak properly after repeated strain. Fraser once described this period of his life by saying, "I was put together with tape and ice." It wasn't just a figure of speech. Ice packs, painkillers, and physical therapy became part of his daily routine. He spent countless hours going in and out of hospitals, recovering from one procedure just to get ready for the next. He was often working through pain while filming, smiling for cameras, and performing like nothing was wrong, even though his body was screaming for rest. As the injuries piled up, they began affecting the kinds of roles Fraser could take. Starring in action films became harder because his body simply couldn't handle the punishment anymore. Where he once performed daring stunts and high-energy scenes, now he had to be more careful. And that wasn't what action producers were looking for. The types of blockbuster films he was used to started drying up. On top of the physical pain, there were emotional and mental effects too. Fraser's changing appearance due to surgeries, medications, and general exhaustion became a target for the media. Tabloids began running unkind stories about his weight gain, Photos taken by paparazzi often showed him in casual clothes, looking tired or heavier, and instead of asking why, many outlets simply mocked him. The charming athletic star from The Mummy was now being called washed up or unrecognizable, with no real understanding of what he was going through behind closed doors. For Brendan Fraser, the toll wasn't just physical, it was emotional too. He was dealing with pain every day, struggling to find the kinds of projects that used to come easily to him, and facing a media that didn't seem interested in giving him the benefit of the doubt. All of this was happening while he was also going through divorce battles and trying to stay present for his kids. It was a perfect storm of personal, physical, and professional challenges that would have broken a lot of people. But there was something else going on, something even more damaging than physical pain, and it was something Brendan had kept hidden for years. What Brendan finally revealed to the world would explain why his career didn't just slow down. It almost disappeared completely. The Philip Burke incident. By the early 2000s, Brendan Fraser was already starting to face struggles with his health, his marriage, and the slow fading of his Hollywood career. But there was one event behind the scenes that many people didn't know about, something that would change how he saw himself, his work, and the industry that once celebrated him. It was an incident that, years later, Brendan revealed publicly, and when he did, it helped explain much of what had gone wrong for him in Hollywood. The story goes back to 2003. Brendan was attending a luncheon hosted by the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. The HFPA is the group responsible for organizing the Golden Globe Awards, one of the biggest and most high-profile awards shows in the entertainment world. These kinds of events are filled with actors, producers, executives, and reporters. For a long time, being seen at them was important for keeping your name in the Hollywood spotlight. It was at this event that Brendan said something happened that would change his life. According to Fraser's detailed recounting in a 2018 interview with GQ, he was approached by Philip Burke, who at the time was the president of the HFPA. Fraser said that during their interaction, Burke groped him inappropriately, grabbing him in a way that was both shocking and deeply violating. Fraser described feeling frozen, panicked, and sick inside. The moment was confusing and humiliating, especially in a professional setting where appearances were supposed to matter. For years, Brendan kept this incident mostly to himself. He told his wife about it and later shared the story with a few trusted people, but he didn't take it public right away. Part of that was fear. Fear of retaliation, fear of embarrassment, and fear of not being believed. Hollywood, like many industries, had a long history of protecting powerful insiders while quietly silencing or ignoring the people they harmed. Brendan was a respected actor, but he wasn't part of the elite inner circle of producers and executives who truly controlled the business. When Fraser finally spoke about it openly in 2018, he was brutally honest about how much it affected him. He talked about how that moment pushed him into a spiral of depression. He said that after the incident, he withdrew from public life more and more. It wasn't just about embarrassment. It was about how that moment shattered his trust in the system he had worked so hard to be part of. Brendan said, "I was blaming myself, and I was miserable." Even though he knew intellectually that what happened wasn't his fault, emotionally, he couldn't shake the feeling that somehow he had allowed himself to be hurt, or that he hadn't responded the right way. Brendan also described how that moment made him question whether he still belonged in Hollywood. After the incident, he noticed that major roles started disappearing. He felt like he had been blacklisted, not officially, but in that quiet, hard-to-prove way that often happens in closed industries. Invitations to big events stopped coming. Auditions dried up. Offers from major studios became rare. Suddenly, the man who had led The Mummy, a huge international blockbuster, was being offered small roles in lower-budget films, direct-to-DVD projects, or TV guest spots. The official response from the HFPA made things worse. After Brendan told them about the incident, the organization handled it privately. Philip Burke denied any wrongdoing, writing later in his memoir that what happened was just a joke, a comment Brendan described as insulting. The HFPA offered what Fraser called a joint statement of apology, but Brendan felt that it was more about protecting their own image than offering him any real support or accountability. This is where the deeper problem showed itself. The entertainment industry, especially at that time, was built on protecting its own. Insiders protected insiders. If someone spoke up about abuse or inappropriate behavior by someone powerful, that person often found themselves shut out. They didn't get formal punishment like firings or arrests, but they stopped getting calls. They weren't invited to the right rooms. Producers stopped considering them bankable. Studios don't like scandal, and it was easier for them to quietly drift away from Brendan than to confront the HFPA, which had major influence in Hollywood through the Golden Globes. Brendan didn't make loud accusations in public at first, and that's part of what made the whole situation harder. He wasn't on the covers of magazines telling his story or making headlines. He was suffering quietly, behind the scenes, while people in the media started saying he was a washed-up star who had lost his edge. The truth was that his depression, his pain, his divorce, and this traumatic incident were all working together to drag him down. Meanwhile, Philip Burke went on with his life in Hollywood circles. He faced no serious consequences. Brendan, on the other hand, had to deal with not only the emotional weight of the assault, but also the career fallout. He said in interviews that he often wondered whether his name had been quietly passed around as difficult or troublesome, even though all he had done was tell the truth about something that never should have happened. That's the quiet power of gatekeeping in industries like film and TV. It doesn't have to be loud or obvious to work. It's simply about who gets the next call, who's on the next project, and who gets quietly pushed to the side while others take their place. And for Brendan Fraser, that's exactly what happened. His leading man career dried up, his opportunities shrank, and he was left wondering if he would ever get a real chance again. Even after he spoke out publicly in 2018, Fraser didn't make a huge media tour about it. That wasn't his style. He told the truth and then stepped back, hoping people would understand the full picture of why his career had taken such a steep dive. And for a long time, it seemed like Hollywood was content to let him stay forgotten. Hollywood's cold shoulder. Brendan Fraser's story isn't just about one actor's career going cold. It's really about the deeper hidden problems in Hollywood, the systems that reward silence, protect power, and punish anyone who dares to speak up. What happened to Fraser fits into a larger pattern that, for years, ruled the entertainment industry. For a long time, the industry was built on a culture of silence, especially when it came to misconduct by people in powerful positions. And when someone broke that silence, whether man or woman, the risks were real. Before the Me Too movement in 2017, stories of harassment, abuse, and assault in Hollywood were often whispered about but rarely addressed publicly. Studios, agencies, and even awards organizations were all connected through personal relationships, money, and influence. Powerful people knew other powerful people, and protecting that circle was more important than doing what was right. If someone brought up misconduct, it was seen as causing trouble. And in Hollywood, being labeled trouble was one of the fastest ways to see your career slow down or stop completely. For Brendan Fraser, the situation was even more complicated because of who he was, a leading man in big action and comedy movies. There was another layer of risk involved in him speaking out, and it had to do with how society views men and vulnerability. Especially in the early 2000s, people didn't know how to handle the idea of a male actor saying he had been sexually assaulted by another man. There was a stigma attached to that kind of admission, and it cut deep into old ideas about masculinity. This is where Brendan's experience shows just how hypocritical the entertainment world can be. As long as he was making money for studios, he was embraced. Everyone wanted to be around him when the mummy was earning hundreds of millions of dollars. But when he became complicated, when his personal life got messy, when his body broke down, when his emotional health took a hit, and when he spoke about being mistreated, the industry turned away. Brendan was no longer the easy-to-sell, perfect Hollywood product, and the industry doesn't like complicated. It wasn't just about his public image. Behind the scenes, the business side of things got colder too. Fraser stopped getting offers for the kinds of movies that win awards or pull in big box office numbers. Where other actors might shift into Oscar bait roles, serious, challenging performances that could rebuild their careers, those scripts weren't landing on Fraser's desk. And while his name used to be floated around for major franchises, that stopped too. Even the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, the organization involved in his 2003 assault allegation, showed how deep the hypocrisy ran. After the incident with Philip Burke, Fraser didn't receive a single Golden Globe nomination, despite delivering some solid performances in later films and TV shows. The same HFPA that had praised him in the late 1990s was now completely silent about him. The message was clear. Brendan was too risky. No one wanted to anger powerful organizations or get involved in something that might cause uncomfortable questions. Studios, producers, and agents often don't say these things out loud, but in private meetings, the conversation goes something like this: is it worth the trouble? And when the answer is no, the calls stop coming, the roles stop arriving, and slowly but surely, the person in question fades from the industry spotlight. But even as Hollywood turned its back on Brendan Fraser, the internet did something different. Around 2016, people online started noticing that Brendan wasn't around much anymore. Reddit became one of the first places where a new kind of support started to build. During a Reddit AMA, Ask Me Anything, that Fraser did to promote a small project, fans noticed that he seemed sad, tired, and different from the joyful guy they remembered. That interview sparked the Sad Brendan Fraser meme, which quickly spread across the internet. At first, some people treated it like a joke, but then something surprising happened. Real sympathy started growing around Brendan's story. Fans began digging into his history, his old interviews, his divorce, his injuries, and then eventually his allegations against Philip Burke. What they found wasn't funny. It was tragic. The more people learned, the more support grew. Online spaces like Reddit, Twitter, and YouTube became filled with posts celebrating Fraser's past work and calling for Hollywood to give him another chance. Brendan Fraser became something rare in celebrity culture, a symbol of Hollywood's cruelty, but also of personal strength. People related to him not because he was a movie star, but because he was clearly a good person who had been treated unfairly. His fans saw through the media's attempts to frame him as washed up or irrelevant. They saw a talented actor who had been physically broken, emotionally isolated, and professionally discarded simply for being honest about his pain. As these fan movements grew, so did the demand for Fraser to return. People wanted to see him succeed again, not just because of nostalgia, but because they believed he deserved it. This quiet but powerful online support would eventually help create space for one of the most unlikely Hollywood comebacks in years. If you found this story interesting, hit that like button and subscribe for more videos like this.